Good evening. My name is David Cohen, and I am the proud president of Five Towns College, located in Dix Hills. It is my honor to welcome you to this important conversation about factual reporting in the media, sponsored by the League of Women Voters. This two-part presentation, Facts or Fake, the role of media in politics, will focus on the identification of personal bias, media bias, and fake news. This is one of the most important issues facing us in these times. This event is made possible not just by the League of Women Voters, but by the students and faculty of the Mass Communication Division at Five Towns College. Five Towns College is a comprehensive institution focusing on music, media, and the performing arts. You can learn more about Five Towns College at ftc.edu. That's ftc.edu. And now, it is my privilege to welcome the League of Women Voters. I hope you will pay close attention to what they have to say, and that at the end of this event, you'll be a more informed and critical reviewer of the news in the media.
Hello, my name is Liz Thalheimer. I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Huntington. Since 1920, the League of Women Voters has encouraged and informed active participation in government, working to increase understanding of major public policy issues and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League works to register voters and to provide voters with election information through voter guides, candidate forums, and debates. The League does not support nor oppose candidates or political parties. The League is an activist, grassroots organization whose members believe that voters should play a critical role in their democracy. I'd like to now introduce you to Diane Slavin. She's vice president of the League of Women Voters of Huntington, as well as the chair of Voter Services Committee, and has worked for months to put this presentation together. Diane?
Thank you, Liz, and thank all of you for joining us tonight. Before I begin, I want to ask you all to write any questions that you might have in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We are pleased to have with us tonight Frances Whittlesey, winner of the Polk Award for Public Service, retired reporter for the New York Times, and former assistant professor of journalism from Hofstra University. She will pose and answer questions during the panel discussion and during the Q&A at the end of the formal presentation. Also, I want to introduce Rahsaan Mahand, counselor for the Higher Education Opportunity Program here at Five Towns College. He will moderate. So let's start by reviewing the things that you'll take away from this presentation. And we'll start with understanding media bias versus fake news. Tonight's presentation really focuses on media bias, and on Thursday we'll be really focusing exclusively on fake news. We want you to be able to be aware of your own personal biases, identify reliable sources, support quality journalism through paid subscriptions, widen your own media diet by reading outlets that oppose your own personal beliefs. Be aware of social media's information manipulation, and finally, protect your personal data. The proliferation of information sources has made it challenging to be a news consumer. Can we find the discipline to watch and wait as breaking news stories unfold and competing news outlets respond to the pressure of getting a story out fast, sometimes at the expense of accuracy and context? How do we find the truth when every day is an information tsunami? New business models have created great profit by abandoning journalists' standards of neutrality, relying on opinion rather than fact. Plus, digital technology makes it possible for anyone to share information worldwide. The result is that a great deal of advertising, publicity, spin, and propaganda is thrown at us every day, dressed up to look like neutral journalism. How can you tell the difference when people blur the lines on purpose? New research by social scientists and neuroscientists document how hard it is for us to hear, see, remember the truth if it challenges our own beliefs. How will you overcome your own biases to learn the truth? Over the course of this presentation, we hope to make you aware of what fake news is and how to protect against it. This slide portrays the importance of the Fourth Estate as the pillar of democracy. The Fourth Estate is mostly referred to as freedom of the press, or the press. It is the guardian of truth and is so important as to be conceived of as the fourth branch of government. We have the right and the duty to hold those in power accountable to us, the people. The free press is essential to democracy. The media, as the fourth branch of government, as I have said, has important benefits, including open expression of ideas, advanced collective knowledge and understanding, communication with representatives of the government. It allows for peaceful social change and protects individual rights. And perhaps most importantly, the free press allows us to confront people of power and protect us against tyranny. Democracy is not a spectator sport. The Bill of Rights did not declare newspaper owners and journalists as a special class. The framers empowered you, the citizenry, to use the extraordinary power of information to check the tyrannical tendencies of the other three estates of power: executive, legislative, and judicial branches. They reserved vast freedoms to citizens as a protection against tyranny, which the Constitution's drafters had witnessed firsthand. Learn this, and you will know them more than most people, that freedom of the press means us. It is up to you, all of us, to determine what information is reliable. You are here because there's a great deal of power in our hands, the power to create content, share news, and share information in the information ecosystem. We cannot wait for journalists to save us. We cannot wait for Facebook and Google to save us. We cannot wait for technology to save us. We have to do the heavy lifting ourselves. We are all members of the Fourth Estate, the free press. To be a positive contributor to the information ecosystem, it's necessary to become news literate. Okay. Just as journalists need training, their audience, you, need training. The answer is news literacy. Astute news consumers will be able to tell whether news is real or fake. We have to cultivate our critical thinking faculties as we seek to play a productive role in a confusing information landscape. The Stanford History Educational Group conducted a nationwide study of students a few years ago to assess their ability to apply critical thinking skills to content online on social media. Based on their results, they recommend starting with 3 key questions. First, who's behind the information? In other words, does the provider of information have a motive to mislead, like a financial or a political interest in swaying your opinion? This may require looking beyond the content. Look at the About Us page, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation on this, and at other websites to see what they say about it. What's the evidence? Do they support their claims with evidence? Is it convincing? Or is the evidence, such as a picture, clearly manipulated? Third, what do other outlets say? Often evaluating the website requires leaving that site to look for corroboration. There are so many more media outlets now. They don't all institute high reporting standards. Educational rigor has suffered in even the quality of news organizations with budget cuts and staff cuts. This puts more responsibility on reporters and editors to check facts. Most importantly, readers and viewers must assess the veracity and the bias of the content. So let's take a look at the differences between straight news, news analysis, and editorializing. Straight news, first of all, just talks about who, what, where, when, why, how. This is mainly what you hear on local news stations. Here on Long Island, I would say it would be Channel 12, where you'd get really just straight news. Then there's analysis, which considers facts, frames the issues, and possibly offers some conclusions. Editorializing is someone's opinion, and there's a distinction between op-eds and editorials, where editorials are typically written by one person. Op-eds are sometimes guest editorials or often put together by editorial boards. I just read in the Times the other day that they are abandoning the term op-eds for guest editorials. Can one outlet do all three? Give us straight news, give us analysis, and editorialize? Yes. The New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Wall Street Journal would all be examples of this. So here's an example of two different ways of reporting the news. This first comes from the Wall Street Journal. U.S. Border Patrol agents used tear gas to disperse hundreds of Central American migrants in the Mexican city of Tijuana, who made a rush for the border fence as tension builds over the diminishing prospects for asylum seekers trying to enter this country. Okay, so compare that now to Fox News, reporting the same story. The focus on tear gas being used at the border comes after a clash between border agents and caravan migrants on Sunday, as hundreds of migrants from a caravan that originated in Central America pushed past Mexican riot police and rushed the border at the port of entry in San Ysidro in the United States. Agents on Sunday shot rounds of tear gas at caravan migrants who threw rocks at law enforcement while trying to breach the border. So I think you can agree that there is certainly a different tone in these two reports. One of them is a little more to the point. The other one is a little bit more emotional. And maybe we could say there's a little bit more biased against migrants. Okay, here's another example of the headlines in this case. The Wall Street Journal states U.S. Border Patrol uses tear gas to disperse migrant caravan. Okay, and Fox News, border agents routinely use tear gas during Obama's administration, the Department of Homeland Security data shows. So this is just two examples of what we're talking about in terms of bias. The facts are there, but the tone is a little bit different, maybe wanting to push you in one direction or the other. So how is media visible? Okay, so media bias is visible. Everybody has biases, but good reporters are aware of their own and try to overcome them by collecting information from a wide variety of sources and presenting well-researched facts. Readers rate the trustworthiness of news articles based on the article's inherent qualities, the reader's personal views, and how they perceive the bias of the publication or broadcast channel. Note the types of stories that are placed on the front pages. Okay. Are they clear opinions, or are they just straight news articles? Sometimes opinions seem to be straight news, or they're presented as straight news. And some more liberal outlets, they will critique conservative news. And conservative news stations, they will critique liberal news. So where do you get your news? From radio, TV, newspapers, online social media podcasts? Do you notice any biases in these sources? Let's go to our panel and get their views.
Hey, and welcome to the discussion forum of Fact or Fake. This segment is intended to provoke dialogue and to continue the conversation about deciphering fact and truth from fake and biased information. Our panelists this evening are a group of conscious thinkers, astute scholars, and vibrant personalities. Please welcome Ryan Reynoso, Gregory Pierre-Louis, and Emily Granados. These students are currently attendees of Five Towns College. Thank you for joining us. So I really want to delve in, panel, and ask this question. I'll go to you, Ryan, first. Where do you get your news?
Twitter.
Okay. Is that the only platform?
Yes.
All right. And how about you, Ms. Granados?
So it varies, definitely, depending on where I go. It leans a certain kind of way. So I have subscriptions, to my favorite sources, but Twitter's really good for breaking news. You can't help but see news stories on Facebook and Instagram, whether they're true or not, but they're there.
Right. And how about you, Greg?
I'm inclined to agree. I would definitely say all platforms of social media, news on television when I do watch it. For the most part, I don't really read newspapers like I used to, but if I do happen to stumble upon it, I might read it.
So let me ask this rather. When you are getting your news, what are you looking for when you're reading the article? And I'll go to you, Ms. Granados.
I'm definitely looking for factual accuracy.
Okay.
I want to make sure that I'm trusting what I'm reading. It's not too opinionated, like what I see is what I get. I want to be able to trust my news source.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Mr. Reynoso?
Honestly, when it comes to getting my news, I'm not too picky. If I had to pick, I like it when the news is short, like it's very concise and straightforward. I don't like when they have a lot of fluff or like filler, so.
Oh, okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned that about fluff and filler. So do you think that the news that you are getting is filled with fluff just to satiate the reader? Or do you think that there's a level of bias in the news that you get?
I think it's both. I think there is a level of bias, and then there is a lot of stuff to satiate it because they want to keep your attention and viewership, and that's just not really how I like to go about getting my news, because that stuff is really annoying. When I'm on the go and I'm someone who doesn't really have a lot of time, I really just want to know what's going on in the world so that way I'm not out of the loop.
Okay, so I got to stick a pin in that, and I'll come right back. Ms. Granados, you were talking about you want to ensure that your news is fact-based, correct?
Yeah.
It was fact-based. So when you do read an article, right, are you initially swayed by what you read in the headline, or do you actually read the content therein and then find another source? What is your process, is what I'm getting at.
Right. So definitely in this day and age, I think it's hard to not have an emotion. People, especially on Facebook, I think Facebook might be the worst with this one.
Okay.
But you see a headline and it'll be something outrageous like, Godzilla is eating the Capitol right now. What? That's crazy. That's allowed on Facebook. People are sharing it. They're commenting, oh, this is crazy. And it turns out a lot of people don't actually read the article. So when I, open it, it could be a link to The Onion.
Right.
Or some sort of parody page. Or, in doing just some quick glancing, I realized that this is not a reliable, accurate source. This is somebody, producing something that might not be true. And people, unfortunately, are thinking it is. So in this day and age, I feel like you almost have to be constantly checking.
Gotcha. Love that. That's awesome. Now we are joined virtually by Frances Whittlesey, an award-winning journalist who retired from the New York Times and is with the League of Women Voters. She's been monitoring the chat and has some comments and questions for us as well. To you?
Yes, good evening. Thanks so much. I appreciate being here and hearing all your interesting comments. Twitter doesn't provide any depth, any context. So I'd like to know how you can rely on that for anything but just, okay, I just heard something happened, but you haven't been able to form an opinion yourself about who's on the right side, who's on the wrong side, is it going to affect you or your family? So how do you deal with that? Ryan, I think you said you rely on Twitter. So do you stop there or do you go any further?
So to follow up the question, just to ensure for those in the studio, Ryan, what she's asking is, do you stop at getting your news from Twitter, or do you pursue other news outlets to get more information?
Yeah, I like pursuing other outlets. I'm a visual learner, so I like watching videos about the news and what's going on. I feel like those help a lot because, especially when they can paraphrase what the articles and what these people are having to say about what's going on in the news, speeds it up. And yeah, I like going about getting my news from other places.
Awesome. To you, Frances.
Oh, I'm wondering, are you hearing me?
We can hear you in the studio.
We can hear you. So again, I asked, what about context? Someone in the chat has asked that. What about context? It feels to me like you're not getting much context. Doesn't that worry you?
So let's go to you, Emily. Let's chime in. I want to hear your thoughts. What about context?
So context is very important. I think if, am I allowed to name drop networks here?
Let's be meticulous.
Okay. So without naming some networks, whether it leans too much to the left or too much to the right, you know, they'll take a quote maybe even from President Biden or anybody, and you know, when listening to the full paragraph in which it was said, it may mean one thing, and then you kind of see an article and it's kind of taken and there's already an angle to it going into it before. You even see them with celebrity blogs, you know? Celebrity gossip pages. Oh, so-and-so said this. Oh, what? And really it wasn't, you know, as bad as it was made out to be. So I think context and also not just stopping at one source. If I see a story on Twitter about someone saying something, I want to, you know, maybe type that in Google, see the first few articles that come up, you know, what people are saying about it and what, you know, the discussion is, and get the bigger picture of the story.
Gotcha. On you, Frances, another question from the chat?
Oh, yes. It's hard for me to hear you every time. Sorry. There was discussion in the slides about neutrality and objectivity. What do you think? Do you think any reporter, I mean, imagine yourself out covering a demonstration or writing about anything controversial. What do you think? Can you be neutral? Can you be objective? In my experience, what we strove to be was fair, because there's really no way you can be truly objective or truly neutral because your own background and biases come into it. But what you can do is strive to be fair. So what do you guys think about that?
And we'll go to you, Greg.
I would agree. I do think it's very difficult for anyone to be completely neutral because everybody has their opinion or bias regardless of what type of line of work you're in. But I do agree that it is important to be fair. So for example, if you ever watch, you know, any type of newscast and they have guests to speak on different topics, it's definitely good to have like a fair amount of people that may agree on one thing, as opposed to, you know, if you have 3 people, 2 people may agree, and then it seems like, you know, they're just ganging up on one person. It's better to create a balance.
Man, I'm telling you, this is a good conversation here. Good discussion. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be back again in just a little while. Please don't forget, if for any of you who are watching and you want to get involved in the conversation, please throw a question in the chat and or a comment. We want to continue the conversation. Back to you, Diane.
Yes, thank you, Roshan, and thank the panelists. It was a really wonderful discussion, and it's so great to hear young people, you know, being so using their critical facilities and trying to judge what is biased and what is real and what is fake. Okay. All right. So this is a chart that kind of plots a number of news outlets from the most liberal, centrist, and right-wing. And you can take a moment to look and see where media outlets that you prefer fall on this kind of continuum. As you see, all the ratings are based on online context only, not TV, print, radio content. So we're not going to discuss any of these particular things, but you have an idea of what you like to read, and you get an idea of do you cross the borders? Do you cross the lines? Do you read some material that comes more from the left, some more from the right, as well as from the center? The most important point, let's go back. The most important point is to access the quality of news that you're reading as you're reading it, to interrogate it, and certainly before you forward it, share it, or post an article. Okay, well, let's talk a little about media consolidation. Another thing you need to be aware of, just 6 media companies controlled 90% of the media in 2011. Consolidated from 50 companies in 1983. These numbers may be a little different depending where you get them from, but the point is that the media that we get, the news that we get, has been greatly consolidated. And it continues to be. One recent example hits home in Westchester County. The owner of the Journal News, Lohud Garnett, merged in November 2019 with New Media Investment Group. That created the largest U.S. media company by print circulation, and it will serve one of the largest online audiences. With this trend of consolidation, consider that the news presented may be accurate and true, but just a handful of companies control the vast majority of our news. Many local news stations and publications are owned by corporate conglomerates. Biases are often transferred and can be used to serve the interests of the corporations. For example, Sinclair requires that local news stations disseminate prepackaged news segments and specials. Media outlets should be transparent about their financial ties. Newspapers have lost readership. One thing all of these newspapers have in common is that their audience is growing smaller and older. If you read a newspaper or news magazine regularly, please support it because they can use your support. So let's talk a little bit about the rise of social media. This slide presents some of the pros and cons of social media. And what's interesting about this is that everything that's good about it can also be bad about it. So on one hand, social media makes it easy for people to create content. And I think probably all of us have done that. It makes it easy to disseminate content. And all of us probably have done this too. Both real and fake content appear in a space that is not well regulated. It's a good thing, and it also can be a bad thing. Algorithms monitor personal search trends and redirect similar content to users. And we'll be talking about this more on Thursday. Many Americans now get most of their news online. So we have to be careful because, as we said before, it's easy for people to create content. It's easy for people to disseminate content, and it's not well regulated. So a lot of what's out there could be just something, as some of our panelists have pointed out, just something that somebody said, and it goes viral. So it's important for everyone to read, listen, watch a variety of different news outlets, which you may agree with or you may disagree with. So it's important to read both sides of the story to become a more informed citizen, to guard against the echo chamber, hearing the same thing over and over and over again. Understand the opponent's views, and by doing so, you may better defend your own views. Broaden your worldview, and subscribe to media that you use and value, as I have said. To protect yourself, read beyond the headline, read the full story before liking it or sharing it. Verify content accounts, check sources, authors, and identities, and I'm very happy to hear that some of our panelists actually do that. Always question the content. People say to me, sometimes I don't know what to believe. Well, people have to start thinking critically about what they read and what they see and what they hear, and really decide whether it makes sense to them, and to look more broadly. Okay. All right. Always question content, particularly question the content that. Pause before sharing. Memes and divisive posts are designed to bypass thinking and appeal directly to our emotions. So with that, okay, that ends our formal discussion for tonight, and I'd like to go back to Francis and the panel and continue the discussion.
Well, thank you, Diane. We're back with our outstanding students, Ryan Reynoso, Gregory Pierre-Louis, and Emily Granados. And I really want to start by asking this question. I'll chuck it over to you, Greg. How do you protect yourself against fake or biased news?
I don't know if you can necessarily protect yourself from it from a standpoint of, what you get, because you're gonna hear things from all sorts of places, but I think you should just, regardless of what you hear, you just have to take it with a grain of salt and don't take everything for its word initially until you find out more information or do your own research.
So I believe it was Albert Einstein that says it takes an intelligent mind to entertain a thought without accepting it, right?
Okay.
So basically what you're offering to our audience is to read it, ingest it, but do not take it as truth. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly.
All right, cool. So let me go here and I'll chuck this over to you, Ryan. Do you think that your own personal bias, since we've been talking about personal bias tonight and in our media, do you think your own personal bias plays a role in the media that we consume?
Absolutely. I feel like in modern day society where it's really hard to get an opinion from the news, even like ABC, you really can't even get an opinion on anything anymore without someone putting their 2 cents in. And it's very hard to find out whether or not these people are genuine, whether or not they're being spoon-fed this information. So I think it's really good that people should go out and find their own news outlet, like their own news, and do their own investigative research on articles and topics. Don't just sit there with that one story and accept it as the truth. Go out and do research if you have the time and if you're really invested in the stories that the people are reporting on.
Gotcha. All right, that's awesome. So earlier, Diane was giving some statistics about the amounts of people who control our media, and we were talking about media bias. Thank you for your response. And I dare go here on the line of controversy, and I'll throw it over to you, Ms. Granados. Do you think that today's media is agenda-driven? And if so, what do you perceive the agenda is? Let me go again before you answer. Do you think that today's media is agenda-driven? And if so, what do you perceive the agenda is?
Well, that is definitely a loaded question, and it definitely is.
Okay.
I do believe that any sort of venture nowadays is agenda-driven, and unfortunately, I believe that, Mr. Money, the root of all evil, I believe that a lot of the narratives being pushed, they're is money-driven agendas behind it. And especially with the network advertisers, any of these things, definitely have a bias in these 6 media companies. Now, mind you, I do believe with new media and all these new and emerging platforms and content creators, we might start to see some change in that. But as far as traditional 6 big company media agenda-driven, I think absolutely.
Gotcha. I feel you. It's perspective. So we're going to check it over to Frances to see what kinds of questions she's getting from the chat. She is an outstanding journalist, and she is here to ask us some questions that you guys have been throwing in. To you, Ms. Whittlesey.
Well, thanks a lot again. Somebody was saying that you should do your own investigative work. Well, that takes a lot of time and a lot of training to do properly. And I'm a little surprised that you all think you could just go ahead and do that. Yes, you can certainly go to different points of view, but as far as really doing investigation, I was trained at Columbia and elsewhere to do investigative reporting, and it does take a lot of time. So these days, I'm not working that way anymore. So I rely on sources I can trust, that I get to know. So I actually know the names of reporters at the New York Times that I read. I read certain columnists. I like what they have to say and how they underpin their opinions with facts. So, I ask you, what about developing some trusted sources? I mean, I hear you all saying you don't read any newspapers, and well, I got to tell you, I start every day reading the New York Times because I enjoy it. To me, it's a great entertainment, among other things, and I get a tremendous amount of information. So what's stopping you from reading a newspaper and developing something other than Twitter, which is just coming from other folks, which is fine, but, don't you go to experts for information about sports or fashion or other things? Why not develop some experts that you trust that do journalism?
Ooh, Frances is asking some bold questions here. I'll go to you, Greg, since you happen to be a proponent or purveyor of who does not read newspapers. Answer the question. What's stopping you from reading newspapers, and what do you think about really generating your own experts on certain matters that you're reading about?
Nothing's really keeping me from reading newspapers. It's just not something that I look to go to for anything. I'm really not a person that goes out and seeks news. News just, like I said before, news just everywhere. You're gonna hear it from one person. You're gonna hear it from one social media platform. You're gonna hear it from TV. It's everywhere. Me personally, I just don't go to newspapers. I don't know why, I just don't.
So do you think, and interject if I'm teetering on your question, Frances, well, do you think that your lack of desire to read a newspaper is because you may feel that the paper may be biased?
No, not that. I wouldn't say that's my reasoning for not going to newspapers.
Okay.
Because everything is biased. I just choose not to just read newspapers.
Okay, so let me go here. The news that you do get, right? And please interject at any time, Frances. I don't want to step on your toes. But the news that you do get, you said that you may get it from, it's everywhere. You pull it out from Twitter, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on Snapchat. Grandma call it Snapface. It's amazing. You're on all these different social media sites. How do you get the truth out of what you're reading?
That is a good one.
Come on, college student.
I mean, for me personally,
Okay.
I know it's usually about reading, but I like to do a lot of math.
Okay.
And if I read something and it doesn't add up, I usually try to, again, do my own research on it and, look for the missing components that may make it make sense. So that's usually my formula for finding the truth.
Gotcha. All right. So, Frances, before I interject, go on.
Yeah, I don't want to be too hard on you guys. I have to say, when I was in college, I was not reading a newspaper every day. I was reading my textbooks and doing what I had to do to get my grades. So I'm expecting a lot from you guys. But there was one other thing, in terms of experts, what is a journalist? What are they trained to do? And I have to tell you, a lot of the people you see on TV are not journalists. They're talking heads. They're reading a copy that somebody else has given them, and they're not doing the work themselves. And I just want to say that to me, becoming a journalist was a calling. And it was a mission. It wasn't something I did to make a lot of money. And as I'm sure you all know, being a journalist today, except with rare exceptions, is not a way to make a lot of money. So I wonder about experts. Do you rely on experts about sports, perhaps, or other topics? And what is it about them? Why do you rely on them for those things, but not so much for information about politics or voting or the economy?
Go on, Ms. Granados. Would you take it?
So definitely, there are a lot of good points to be made. I am subscribed to the New York Times myself. I'm subscribed to Newsday, and I'm finding more that, the visual content might be better for our younger generation. But I do like a good paper. But anyway, as far as finding experts, there is a great point to be made that a lot of the people we see on TV are talking heads or commentators, just discussing a subject without really being, as extensive, following the codes of ethics as a proper journalist should, and going through those proper channels. Now, of course, we're gonna have everybody, has their favorites.
Right.
For me, definitely Ronan Farrow is someone I look up to a lot.
Okay.
He was really one of the leaders behind exposing the Me Too movement in Hollywood and the power of, all these men and these elite men. And, it's really about, I think, also finding, people that you like. So for News 12, that's our local news here, seeing some of those reporters and anchors, and then maybe, in this day and age, following them on their social media pages when they post, an upcoming story, breaking story. Definitely they're a team of journalists that I, look forward to. And, you read stuff, whether it's a newspaper or online, sometimes you're gonna like it and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're gonna think, well, maybe this is not my cup of tea, and that's quite all right. There's plenty of different, avenues to go through, and it's about finding the one that works for you.
Gotcha. All of this, just so much to get into. I tell you, if we only had more time. Listen, this has been the panel discussion for Fact versus Fake, and we definitely enjoy the conversation. To our panelists, thank you so much. To Francis, thank you so much. Diane, back to you.
Thank you to Fran and the panelists for their participation. I have to say that, in this day and age, with all of the information that's being thrown at us all the time, I think it's easy to tune things out and just kind of thinking, I don't know what to believe, I don't know whether it makes a difference. But there's a lot of important reasons to pay more attention to what's going on in our society and becoming more civically aware. On Thursday, we're going to talk exclusively about fake news and how to identify it and how to fact check it in a very concrete way. So thanks to everyone who's participated tonight. We hope you'll want to continue the conversation through the hashtags that are posted on your screen. And we'll continue on Thursday, and I hope you'll come back to join us then. I'm Diane Slavin from the League of Women Voters of Huntington. Have a good night.